It is now New Year's Eve, and this is my 2018 ramblings. So, the only way that it could really be my 2018 ramblings is if I get this done while it's still 2018. Simple, right? So, as a result of that, I am going to focus on two subjects. I have to pick my battles, unfortunately, because editing, due to my own incompetence and due to apparently how lengthy it can be in getting done, basically I'm not even 2 hours into the editing, and in all likelihood I'm going to not be able to get this video out until my next video that I will be talking, that I've already talked about in this thing, or at least until I have half of it done, because it's the two-parter. So I'm going to talk about Let's Go, and I'm going to talk about specifically the positives. I can get into ripping all of the... Here's the thing. I was almost literally spitting vitriolic venom that was somehow not melting through my skin when I tried to tackle it from the negatives. In all likelihood, those feelings and stuff are just not going to go away in the next year. In fact, they might be even strengthened depending on how things go. So for the 2019 ramblings, I will go down that line. But for now, I'm just going to focus on the positives. So there's that, and then there will be one other thing that you can just skip to. I will make sure that I have the timestamps or something. Anyways, so before I get to the positives, know this, if you have somehow been deliberately trying to live under a rock in regards to these games until you get them, I will not be talking about the surprises for the most part, but I'm going to get into what even is Let's Go. Let's Go is a new story masquerading as a Yellow remake. The two sole differences that, as far as I can tell, is this happens a certain amount of time after the events of Red, Blue, and Green, and when I say Red, Blue, and Green, I specifically mean Red and Blue going on their journey, getting their first Pokemon, defeating the gyms, defeating the Elite Four, Blue becoming champion, I guess, and then Red defeating him, all before Blue could even be made an official champion in the Hall of Fame. This takes place in an alternate world where that happened, but they never got a Pokedex. And from what I can tell, especially because Trace's sister exists and Daisy does not, and she's not even mentioned, I can only imagine that Daisy does not exist in this world. And the reason I suspect that to be the case is because after you defeat Brock, as you may have been able to tell if you looked at the reveal of Blue being in this game, he reveals that he, once upon a time, actually helped Professor Oak with making the Pokedex. Specifically, where are Pokemon found and things like that. At least to my understanding of my recollection. Anyways, now, in all likelihood, based on the evidence we have in Fire Red and Leaf Green, Daisy originally did that instead of Blue, and that's why they have the Pokedex. So, Daisy not existing in this world may very well make it possible Blue was the first person to help Professor Oak with that. And the second thing is that from what I can tell, Team Rocket wasn't around at the time. In this continuity, both Blue and Red defeated Giovanni before Giovanni decided to form Team Rocket. And so, as a result of that, you have Team Rocket having a lot of influence in the Kanto region and still being a criminal international enterprise. But there are signs, like, for example, that Giovanni is known for being the gym leader of Viridian City, at least two people like Blue and Red. He's not really known for being the leader of Team Rocket. In the original games, if you didn't know, the big secret was Giovanni was the Viridian City gym leader. His role as the leader of Team Rocket, that was basically an open secret. But in the case of Let's Go, it seems like that's not actually the case. it seems that by the existence of a certain recurring member from Team Rocket, and also based on what President Sylph says to Giovanni, that Giovanni's official artwork, or specifically him wearing the Team Rocket lapel, whatever, is not something that he normally wears because it's supposed to be a secret that he's a member of Team Rocket. Let alone the leader of this shadowy organization. And it's only after the Sylph Corporation has been taken over that the president mentions how, now that I know who you are, I can't work with you, which would suggest that Giovanni, after losing to Red and Blue in this continuity, originally tried to use him being the Viridian City gym leader to potentially help. I mean, if you're the Viridian City gym leader, and you can also potentially see how them catching Pokemon from all over and so on and so forth, there may have actually been some sort of merit to all of that when you are the president of the corporation that created the Pokeball. But that's just my guess on the issue. Either way, I imagine that, based on that context, Giovanni had only now revealed that he was the head honcho of Team Rocket. So that's the main point, from what I can tell. Specifically because Giovanni, in this game, mentions the Elite Four. In the original games, this didn't seem to be an actual thing. In fact, it was originally presumed that Giovanni, because he was the strongest gym leader, I mean, he calls himself the greatest trainer even in these games, that he wasn't deluded when he said that. And as a result, he thought he could actually take over the world through being so powerful and being competent enough to be the strongest gym leader, to collect all of these Pokemon and so on and so forth, for the glory of Team Rocket, as anyone who's played Gold, Silver, Crystal can tell you, if they remember that thing, which does not exist in Heart Gold and Soul Silver. In these games, it seems more so like after losing to Blue and Red, Giovanni basically ran away from his position. He had to come to grips with the fact that, no, he is not the strongest. And he already had to kind of come to grips to that with the very existence of the Elite Four. But now, trainers that were even younger than him were beating him. And so he only returned to his position as the Viridian City gym leader, as he did in the originals, because he's been forced into that position. And so those are the two main differences. But for the most part, it really is you and your rival. This is your adventure, and you just so happen to have Blue, who is pretty much a legend around here, being something of a mentor in the same way that Kukui is. The only reason I can think to why Trace is the character that he is because when compared to Blue, he's never going to live up to that standard. No one's ever going to think, oh yeah, this is the new Blue. No. For better or worse, that's never going to be the case. I'm holding back the tirade that I want to avoid. It can wait a year or so. I think the emotions will only get a lot worse by then, but who knows. A lot of things are preserved, but a lot of things are different as well. For example, a lot of antiquated things like, the necessity to fish. You don't really need a fishing lure or anything to catch many Pokemon, especially given how you can catch Pokemon in Let's Go. So the people who would give you fishing rods, they're renting their places out. There's no bikes because there are many Pokemon that are large enough that you can not only ride them, but they can run fast enough that it's more of a question, why would you want a bike? Beyond that nostalgia. So instead, the old bike shop is instead the house of a guy who is just a fanatic for bikes. And this further ties in with the fact that in both the original games, and when I say original games, I mean Gold, Silver, and Crystal, and Heart Gold and Soul Silver, that place is closed because the guy who used to have that shop has moved all the way to Goldenrod City for one reason or another. And the bike that you could have purchased in the original games in Fire Red and Leaf Green, as much as using a voucher to get something can be considered purchasing something, that bike is also mentioned alongside many others. So the game, in my eyes, as a result of that, because it's referencing that this was a limited time only bike, shows to me that they are basically saying that, yeah, it has been years for this one instance of a game. But there are other examples as well. Because you can catch Pokemon that you were originally not able to get unless you traded them for another Pokemon, you can find people like the old man in Vermilion City who would ask you for a Spearow to catch a Farfetch. And he says, I've thought about going out to catch a Spearow. And he has a Farfetch with him. Just nice little nods here and there. So you get constant little nods there, but the final piece, in my opinion, well, it is, in my opinion, it's the final piece. It is definitive, but in my opinion, it's the final piece, is there is a certain trial captain, if you do not know who it is already, who isn't a trial captain yet. They're visibly younger, and it just goes to show that, yeah, these games, they're set before the events of Sun and Moon and Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. Which, speaking of which, in Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, I think it was a Pikachu plushie was replaced with an autograph saying good luck. And when people zoomed out, they could see that it was written on paper with the image of the Vermilion City gym badge. Well, in Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, upon defeating Lieutenant Surge, he gives you an autograph before even giving you the badge. So, in this universe, Lieutenant Surge basically does that for anyone who manages to beat him, which I think is the most sarcastic thing that he could possibly do. He's the third strongest. He's the third weakest gym leader, and he's giving you an quote-unquote autograph saying good luck. Not everyone's going to be able to beat anyone beyond that, and it's just the smugness that just makes it all the better. This game, many people, they're going to be saying that, well, because Sabrina mentions how a character will not appear for 3 years, that therefore these games take place at the same time as the events of Red, Blue, Green, Yellow, and Fire Red and Leaf Green. No. I disagree, at the very least. Because Blue, at the very least, is wearing the same attire in Yellow, and this is also what he would then be wearing in Gold, Silver, and Crystal. And not only that, but Blue will be the one who gives us the power to Mega Evolve by giving us a Keystone Megastone. Well, what other game that was directed by Junichi Masuda that had anything to do with Mega Evolution mentioned Blue visiting some region? So this would have to take place somewhere between, chronologically, the events of Gold, Silver, and Crystal and X and Y. Especially because there is no way that I will ever accept that Blue is in his 20s or 19 or anything like that in these games, when he's going to be twice as tall as a Cantonian-born child who is 11 years old, who just so happened to move from Alola. It's too much of a sell for me, unfortunately. And the final piece of things to make things fit, if only for that reason, is just so that you will not be battling Red or Blue or anything like that, is that this is the year that, at least for the Indigo Plateau, but it's implied to be for all of the Pokemon Leagues of the world that have been established, that the champion is going to be integrated as an actual part of the Pokemon League. That is pretty strange, but since Junichi Masuda said it, he's written it into an actual game, it's more or less the law or whatever. So, to make sense of this thing that Junichi Masuda has decided, which only exists just so you don't battle Blue or Red, and considering the Kanto cast is as quote-unquote tight as it is, you will be strapped for any character to come battling you as opposed to Trace, who will be taking on the role of Blue as far as being the person who you will battle in what is now an arena / waiting room right before the Hall of Fame. And not only that, it could also be suggested that this is something that we see in at least Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. So it's not clear what that necessarily means, because briefly, Steven also recognizes you as the champion the first time that you go to battle him for a rematch. So it is very much an arena / waiting room, and that's how it functions in this game. After you finally become the champion, Trace will basically beat the Elite Four, and then he'll be waiting that weight room, just like Steven is, for you to come and challenge them, instead of the exact opposite in Sun and Moon and Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. Now, this would be a bit of a disappointment if it weren't for the fact that, and I'm trying to paraphrase what Brock says, every gym leader basically has the right to challenge the champion. Now, you won't necessarily know this until you actually decide to, talk to the gym leaders after becoming champion, and you can battle them. And you can do that every single day. All 8 of them, including the 8th gym leader, who will not be Giovanni. So if you don't know who it is, I'm not going to say it. So to make sense of this means that people like Red and Blue and all sorts of other characters, like potentially Gold, Silver, Chris, Lyra, Ethan. If Lyra and Chris are already separate characters, for better or worse, I don't know if I could say the same for Leaf and Green, but then again, I would also have to say that Green's attire is very much based off of Leaf's, as well as Green's original attire, so make of that what you will. Also, Red, Blue, Green, Lance upon rematches, and Trace are the only ones who will be able to wield Mega Evolution in these games, for better or worse. I find it interesting that Lance has that, and I already know the reason as to why he would have that, and I'm sure some people could figure it out themselves, but as far as Pokemon games go, you can skip this. This has absolutely nothing to do. It is a interesting trip down memory lane for veteran players. And the way that it is marketed, it is also a new adventure for the young folk. That moment when you finally realize you are absolutely ancient. As far as this adventure went, I think it is as simple as Kanto needs to be. I think it's as complex as Kanto needs to be. At least it's going to be a romp through the original games without Johto or even the Sevi Islands, which kind of disappointed that the Sevi Islands don't exist in these games, or at least the traversable. So the idea when Sabrina says it won't be 3 years until someone shows up or anything like that is because, well, number one, I see 2021 being the time. I think I've already said this, but I see 2021 being the point where there will actually be a Let's Chase Entei and Raikou. That's what it was. But yeah, she's potentially talking about the protagonist for those games, saying it's going to be for those games. I'm struggling to see anywhere else it could fit. Well, I guess that all depends on when it happens in relation to things. Finally lost my train of thought. Okay, not only is it a bit of a real-world thing, in the same way that 1996 was when the Red and Green came out, and then 1999 was when Gold and Silver came out. It's a reference in that way. But if we're also looking at it from the fact that this is an actual timeline, in all likelihood this would be more than a few years after the events of basically Gold, Silver, and Chris beating the gyms and taking on the Pokemon League. Granted, Johto doesn't really come up that much in this game, just a lot of references. And once again, to reference what I said before, because Giovanni is still the Viridian City gym leader, and there's apparently been no one but a certain someone considered worthy by either Professor Oak or Lance, or, well, most likely Lance, but possibly also Professor Oak. Because of that, and the fact that I guess what you would call Mount Cinnabar has not erupted yet, but the game does actually have a certain tidbits here and there, and one of those tidbits in the back of the corner is they mention how Mount Cinnabar has become really active lately. So yeah, it's going to erupt. It's just going to erupt later for the purposes of this game. Yeah. And also, Koga and Sabrina are just absolutely neck and neck, but it seems like Koga is the only one who's actually interested in becoming a member of the Elite Four. Sabrina seems like she just doesn't think she's worthy, is what I'm getting from her dialogue, or monologue, I guess. As a result of that, once Giovanni's out of the picture, once Blaine is believed to potentially be dead, and because Koga and Sabrina are just neck and neck, Koga is going to be able to become a member of the Elite Four. It's just a matter of a spot being opened. It doesn't really matter how it happens. In fact, for those like myself who theorize that Hao is the son of Bruno, yeah, there's no indication of that. Not even the fact that you can receive Alolan variants of Pokemon by trading them with these people who are in Kanto, but they're from Alola, and they just want the Cantonian variant. And upon rematches, the Elite Four will have these Pokemon. Like, Lorelei will have an Alolan Sandslash of all Pokemon she could pick, but hey, Bruno, of all Pokemon he could pick, is going to have an Alolan Golem, because they just cannot let this die. Agatha has an Alolan Marowak. Should be self-explanatory why, even though it's the only Pokemon that isn't poison-related. Every other Pokemon she has is poison-related, but just not this one. And then Lance has, once again, of all Pokemon, but if it was going to be that was an Alolan variant, the only one that would make sense, if only from a type quote-unquote perspective, is Alolan Exeggutor. It's so strange, but hey. There's a lot of moments to be had in this game. A lot of memories, new ones to make. There are a lot of changes, obviously. On one hand, you'll be able to catch almost all Pokemon that are at least not version exclusive. You want to catch a Lapras or Hitmonlee or a Porygon, you can do it. You want to catch yourself a Snorlax besides the two that you have always tried to capture? Oh, that's entirely possible. You want to get another Oldamber. You want to get another Helix Fossil. You want to get another Dome Fossil. You can do that. You want to catch even more legendary Pokemon. You can do that in this game, because if there's one thing that Junichi Masuda will say about Pokemon, is that the simple joy of Pokemon is simply catching, for better or worse. But Junichi Masuda has handed the fate of the Pokemon franchise to people like Shigeru Mori, and as far as I can tell, Shigeru Mori does not agree on that at all, so nothing to worry about in that case, supposedly. So if you are on the fence about getting this game still, which wouldn't be surprised if you were, I would say you don't have to get this game. But if you want something to at least hold you off until the 2019 game, this is as good as it gets. I know that's not very flattering, but as I said, Kanto is simple but charming, or at least the original games are. But simplicity only has so much to it, for better or worse. I think it has a lot of personality and whatnot. There are, like, for example, go talk to the old guy in Cerulean who would tell you about the gym badges. Well, because you don't really have HMs that other Pokemon can learn and that only can be used if you have certain badges, that guy will tell you more than a few things about all the badges, and you'll have all sorts of things to say about them. And I think that's a perfect example to show you what this game would offer. Even the new characters who were just made for this game do seem to really capture the simplicity of it. Simplicity is not necessarily bad, and complexity is not necessarily good, and vice versa. I believe that works. Other than that, I don't think there's really much to say here. I enjoyed the game for what it was. I look forward to potentially beating as many master trainers as I can before the next one, because that will take quite a while. Maybe I'll have it done by June, who knows. Other than that, I don't really have much to say. And that's about it. And now, because Sword and Shield is apparently available for pre-downloading, I'm going to, as usual, vacate YouTube until I'm done with the game. And then I will ironically be starting my 2019 rambling. See you then.